Is it okay to masturbate? That seemingly simple question has been subject to shame, dogma, and silence for centuries. But when a student asks it of a mystic like Sadhguru, what is revealed is not morality or medicine, but a profound energetic code that few are ready to hear. In our culture, talking about masturbation still makes you uncomfortable. To some, it sounds like a sin, to others like liberation, and to many it's laughable. But in the invisible world, in that realm where energy moves, where thoughts, our vibrations and actions leave their mark on the aura, orgasm is not a simple physical release. It's a brutal transfer of power, a loss or a transformation, a portal that can open upward or close in on oneself. Sadhguru makes it clear, masturbation is neither good nor bad, but there's a catch. The problem isn't the action itself, but the unconsciousness behind it. Because if you don't know what you're giving away when you masturbate, you won't know what you're losing either. Semen, that word that science reduces to sperm and proteins, was considered a sacred nectar for millennia. Tantric texts speak of it as leaves, the fluid of life. Sages viewed it as an alchemical elixir that could nourish the soul or be consumed as useless fuel for desire. Today, free pornography, constant stimulation, and hyperstimulation have turned masturbation into an automatic, even compulsive act. What was once ritual is now routine. What was once respected is now trivialized. Energy drains, willpower breaks, and the soul is silenced. Have you ever wondered why, after unconscious masturbation, you sometimes feel a sense of emptiness? Why can that moment of liberation be followed by sadness, fatigue, or disconnection? It's not guilt or punishment. It's simple vibrational physics. You've unleashed your spark without direction, but this chapter isn't to judge you. It's to reveal you, because pleasure isn't your enemy. Desire isn't your jailer. Masturbation isn't the problem. The problem is not knowing you're playing with sacred fire. Prepare to look at desire from a perspective that goes beyond the body. Sadhguru opened the door. We're going to go in, and what we're going to discover isn't just sexuality. It's energy, consciousness, and awakening. And if you stay until the end, you'll understand why the system wants you to ejaculate soullessly, and how you can transform that act into a channel of creative power. Subscribe now. What you're about to hear couldn't be told to you by any psychologist or priest. Only a soul-seeking awakening can dare to look at this. When a student dared to ask Sadhguru if masturbation was a spiritual problem, the entire room froze. Many expected a moralistic answer, others a traditional sermon, but what they received was more disturbing. An answer that seemed superficial but concealed. A message only suitable for those who can read between the lines. Sadhguru didn't say yes or no. He said something much more powerful. There's nothing wrong with masturbation, but if it becomes compulsive, you're destroying something inside you. That's the code. He didn't talk about the body, he talked about what's inside you. He didn't talk about guilt, he talked about compulsion. And if you understand spiritual language, you know that compulsion is the absence of inner freedom. Sadhguru explained that any action repeated without awareness enslaves you, and that when masturbation becomes an automatic mechanism, it not only wears down the body but also drains energy that could have been used for something much higher, energy that never returns, energy that cannot be seen but can be felt. In Yika tradition, semen is more than a fluid. It's distilled energy. It is said that producing 1 drop of semen requires the transmutation of 40 drops of blood, and that this energy can be used to create life or destroy your vitality if wasted. In yoga practice, especially in deeper branches like Braha, it is taught that conserving sexual energy, not through repression but through sublimation, elevates consciousness. The body stops living for pleasure and begins to live for expansion. But beware, Sadhguru doesn't propose forced abstinence. In fact, he warns against repression, because that generates a dark, distorted, and dangerous energy. What he proposes is something much more difficult: total presence. And this is where we enter occult territory. Have you ever wondered if someone or something wants you to be permanently in a compulsion? Why do you think masturbation is so promoted today? So normalized, so constantly encouraged? Because pleasure without awareness is so profitable and so dangerous at the same time. Satguru leaves the door ajar. We're going to cross it because what the yogi suggests, although he doesn't say it directly, is that every unconscious sexual act is a loss of spiritual power, a leak, an energetic fracture. And if we connect this in this context, we align ourselves with what the ancient sages knew and what modern forces promote. And the real question no one dares to ask arises: what if the true enemy weren't desire, but forgetting who you are when you desire? In the next section, we delve into the heart of this sacred loss, semen as an energetic, spiritual and symbolic substance. Subscribe if you haven't already, because from now on we leave the surface and descend into the hidden chambers of sexual energy. Where science sees fluid, the soul sees essence. Most people, when they hear the word semen, think of a simple biological byproduct, something functional, physical, banal. But ancient cultures didn't see it that way. For them, semen was a sacred substance, an energetic essence that contained much more than sperm. It contained life, will, power, and spiritual memory. In yogic tradition, this substance is called leaves, the distilled fifth essence of the body. It's not just a fluid. It's the crystallization of vitality. The ancients claimed that 40 drops of blood were needed to create a single drop of semen. Exaggerated, perhaps. Not so much if we understand that the body produces semen through a complex energy process involving the liver, spinal cord, brain, and nervous system. In other words, when you ejaculate, you release energy from the entire system. But there's something even deeper. Semen not only contains biological charge, it also contains energetic information. It's like a vibrational USB drive. It stores frequencies, emotions, even fragments of intention. When you release it without awareness, you're also releasing that. When you do it compulsion, that energy fragments. When you do it with presence, it can be transmuted. For this reason, many tantric schools taught not to ejaculate during sexual intercourse, not out of repression or chastity, but because they understood that conserving that energy within the body generated mental clarity, emotional strength, and spiritual expansion. Taoist monks spoke of raising seminal energy to the brain, while yogis spoke of burning it in the inner fire to awaken the kundalini. On the other hand, ejaculating constantly without awareness was seen as opening a tap of sacred energy and letting it drip until you were empty. Sound familiar? Sadhguru subtly suggests it when he says that every frequent, aimless ejaculation wears down something deep within. He doesn't say this as a threat. He says it as an energetic observation. And if we heed what the sages of multiple traditions revealed, they all converge on the same warning. He who does not master his seed does not master his life. But this goes even further, because if semen carries a spiritual charge, what happens when it is released under the influence of pornography, fear, anxiety, or existential emptiness? Not only is energy lost, energy is programmed. Because what many don't know is that orgasm creates a micro-altered state of consciousness. In that instant, the subconscious is open, and if that moment is contaminated by artificial images, dense emotions, or inner disconnection, it becomes imprinted, becomes a vibrational programming, and repeats itself over and over again. However, when that same act is transformed into ritual, channeling, and mindfulness, semen can literally become light. In the next section, we'll reveal why modern masturbation, far from being sexual freedom, is an energetic trap carefully designed to keep you vibrating low. And if you haven't already, subscribe. Because this isn't sex education, this is spiritual alchemy. When you get aroused without a soul, someone else harvests your energy. Masturbation today isn't the masturbation of the past. There's nothing natural about it, nothing intimate, nothing sacred. It's a modern ritual designed to help you unleash the most precious thing you have, without even realizing it. Your attention, your energy, your essence. Exaggerated, think about it. Every time someone masturbates in front of a screen, they are not alone. They may think they are, but they are actually being watched. measured and manipulated. Did you know that the big free porn sites are not sex companies, but tech giants that manage millions of biometric data, behavioral patterns and brain scans? Every click, every video you watch, every minute you spend getting off is being studied like a psychosexual map that allows certain algorithms to perfect the content, that the more addiction it generates. And it's not just addiction, it's vibrational programming. You are at your most vulnerable moment. Your energy field opens. Your mind disconnects from higher consciousness. And in that instant, images, emotions, and codes that don't belong to you enter. You don't notice it, but you are being loaded with dense frequency because pornography, as it is designed today, is not to liberate you, it's to drain you. They call it pleasure, but it's an invisible contract. You surrender your inner fire and in return receive a fleeting sense of escape. And like any drug, you'll want to repeat it again and again. And here comes the darkest truth. Every unconscious orgasm is a surrender of power. Every automatic masturbation teaches you to consume rather than create. Every externally induced stimulus breaks the connection with your true creative energy. The result, emotional fatigue, difficulty manifesting, lack of focus, and an existential void disguised as sexual desire. It's a coincidence. There's no real active interest in keeping humanity compulsively masturbating, because a soulless being who lives in pleasure doesn't question. A man who ejaculates every day without awareness lacks the will to build anything great. A person who associates his sexual energy only with escape cannot awaken. That's why the system gives it to you for free, because it knows it's not. And this is the most brutal part. While you release your energy, there are others who learn to transmute it, and those are the ones who truly advance. Tantra says it, the Tao too, and Satguru hints at it. Sexual energy is your most potent fuel. You can spend it, or you can convert it into vision, presence, creativity, connection. But for that, you need to break out of the trap and look your desire in the eye. Now let's see how to transform that energy into sacred fire, how to stop losing it and start elevating it. Subscribe if you feel this message has touched you, because you haven't lost yourself yet, you're just remembering. After all that's been said, there's a truth we must bravely acknowledge. Desire is not the enemy. Masturbation is not the enemy. The problem isn't the fire. It's not knowing how to light it without getting burned. In the spiritual world, sex isn't a sin. It's an energetic portal and orgasm. Far from being a simple relief, is a moment of expansion, of dissolving the ego, of opening the vibrational field. The question isn't whether you should masturbate or not. The real question is, are you masturbating from a place of awareness or a place of lack? Because compulsive masturbation stems from emptiness, stress, loneliness, disconnection, boredom, and emotional wounds. It's a momentary patch that soothes but never fills. And every time you do it that way, the soul moves a little further away from the body, and sexual energy, instead of elevating you, drags you down. Conscious masturbation, on the other hand, is a ritual, an intimate ceremony where you don't seek to ejaculate, but rather to connect. Tantra, Tao, and the deepest teachings of yoga speak of self-satisfaction as a path to transformation, slow, connected breathing, upward energetic movement, and visualization of energy flowing toward the heart and third eye. Absolute presence in the body without external images. Clear intention, not just pleasure, but transmutation. When you do this, you're not masturbating in the modern sense. You're practicing inner sexual magic. You're harvesting the energy that previously escaped and directing it where you want to grow. And here, the true miracle happens. That energy you used to empty yourself, now it becomes vision, clarity, creative power, intuition. You begin to notice that you have more strength to manifest, more charisma, more natural magnetism, a greater ability to sustain what previously eluded you. Sadhguru mentions this in a low voice, but his gaze screams it. All the energy you compulsively waste is the same. Energy you could use to become immense. That's why the system doesn't want you to discover this, because a person who transforms their inner fire doesn't settle for living in slumber. They don't let themselves be manipulated or distracted. What if every wish were a message from your soul asking for reconnection? And if instead of running toward the release, you dared to stay with the energy and listen to what it has to say? The next time you feel that impulse, ask yourself a single question. Am I seeking pleasure or am I seeking presence? If you learn to stay in the fire without running away, the fire will make you new. It's not about denying desire, it's about transforming it into light. Subscribe, because what's coming is for souls who no longer want to live half-heartedly. The revelatory ending, the big why, and the message that could give you the power you didn't know you were losing. We live in an age that laughs at the sacred, an age that has turned the body into a discharge machine, the soul into an unimportant code, and sex into cheap entertainment. But masturbation, that seemingly private, invisible, innocent act isn't neutral, because every time you do it, you're choosing a direction, not outward but inward, not toward pleasure but toward purpose or emptiness. It's not about morality, it's not about repression, it's not even about religion, it's about energy. And that energy, when wasted without awareness, not only lowers your frequency, it opens portals. Yes, emotional, mental, and vibrational portals. Portals through which inexplicable fatigue, brain fog, apathy, listlessness, and a lack of magnetism creep in. And what if all that you feel as depression is nothing more than your soul screaming for having lost its inner fire? And if every aimless ejaculation is an energetic micro-suicide? The ancients knew it, the tantrics knew it, the alchemists knew it, and the matrix programmers knew it too. That's why they program you to do it constantly. Because a being connected to their sexual essence, to their inner fire, to their seed, is a danger to the system. That's why what Satguru says is so powerful. That the seed isn't just something physical. It's a form of Shakti, a source of leaves, an antenna that connects dimensions. And you decide whether to use that antenna to connect with heaven, or to empty yourself into the void. So no, masturbation isn't bad, but it's not neutral either. It's a sacred act that has become banal, and that's the real danger. Because when ritual becomes habit, the soul falls asleep. And when the soul falls asleep, others take your place. So before the next time, ask yourself this question: am I filling or emptying myself? Am I honoring my fire or extinguishing it? Only you know the answer. But if this video ignited something in you, even a spark, then you're no longer the same as when you started watching. And that's a start. And if you feel like this stirred something deep within you, subscribe, not for me, but for you. Because what we're going to continue sharing isn't content, it's alchemy.